Hey YouTube, it's Friday and I was going to cut some logs, but I'm a little wore out. But anyway, I want to answer a question that somebody had asked me or made a comment about, how to do this. So when I make the toe board, I order a piece of this channel 6 foot long because I need pieces of it to work with. So when I have the 6 footer now, not the short piece, but the 6 footer, the question was, how do I make the left and the right 1 inch Acme bolt be straight in line with one another? And it's simple. First of all I do is taper the point so that I have good welding. Now you can see that this is a little bit tapered here, but I taper it more than that so that there's almost like a 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch point coming towards one another so that I can line them up. And then what I do, now I'm talking about a piece of this 6 foot long. Then what I do is I take and turn this excuse me, on a little bit of an angle, and I put the 2 points together, leaving this bolt rest in the angle part of this channel. Now the channel's straight for the 6 feet because it's fairly thick and everything. And then once I put it in there, I clamp it into place, and then I weld a small bead of weld from one to the other. And then I leave that cool off, and I don't want it too high because you'll bump the back of this as you turn it. So what I do is I turn it then, I turn the bolt, a 1/4 or 1/2 a turn, it doesn't matter. And because it's laying in there flat, I clamp it again, and then I put another thing on it, usually halfway, so I'm on the opposite side, and that heat then from the welder will kind of make everything stabilize itself. And then I'll turn it a 1/4 turn, weld it, and then a 1/2 a turn and weld it again. So the secret for me, and now this isn't perfectly straight like a machined piece would be, but it's pretty darn straight. You're not off more than, I'd say, a 1/16, if that. So this doesn't really notice that because of the way I'm using it. But anyway, that's how I line up the 2 ends of the 1 inch Acme bolt by putting it in angle iron and bringing them together. Now, in a worst case scenario, if you're really in dire need and you don't have a 6 foot piece of channel, what you could do is you could just take 2 boards. Take 2 boards like this, just take one and turn it upright, put it together and hold it like a cradle. You want that V shape down like I have this right now, so that when the bolt's in there, it's laying down on that. And then you can put some beads of weld in there. Then after I have it stitched, in 4 places at least, then I'll take it out of there and I'll put it where I can roll it to do the welding to it. And from what I noticed, it stays pretty nice. Now when it's real hot like that from welding it, you do want to look down it, because if it's off a little bit, sometimes you can just take and give it a little bump on the end and it'll straighten itself right out. Other times you want to kind of wait for it to cool down. And then all I do is weld that whole thing about the size of the outside threads. Grind that off a little bit. Now the thing here with this is once you have one thread going one way and another thread going the other way, right and left threads, you really can't do a lot with this. I mean, you can only move the coupling to here and back, and that's the whole point of this machine, is this handheld machine, is to do that. Just move the coupling back and forth. Alright, so that answers the question about how do I get these bolts to line up. That's how I do it. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is take you over to the Sawmill and show you some of the things on there, the toe board, because apparently the people who watch my channel, you know, I have a lot of videos on there and they haven't gone back and looked at any, because I did explain the toe board before, so I'm going to do it again. Okay guys, so you can see that I'm behind the saw. I'm behind the head. In other words, I do my sawing in the front of the sawmill as you see it there. I stand back behind it to do the operating of it. I know a lot of you have seen what I'm about to show here, but some people have asked me about it, so I'm going to explain it again. Besides, when I make these and send them out, it helps the guys to put them together easily. So anyway, what we're looking at here, this is the end of the sawmill bunk. So you have one bunk rail and then the second bunk rail. Alright, so just let me zoom in a little bit here. I'm going to get the whole thing in place. Yeah, so if you look at that there, I'm just going to grab something to point with. You notice this is what's known as a toe board. Okay, now you can take what I do sometimes. I put 2x4s, a 2x4 or even a 1x on top of the bunk rail. Not here so much well, I put them anywhere, down there or wherever I need to. The purpose of the toe board is to get the log to be as straight as you can. Mainly a lot of guys figure it's to do through the center of the log where the pith is, but the more you cut, the more you're going to find out that the center of the log is not where the pith is. The pith can be offset, and usually it is on a lot of logs. So, but anyway, the main thing here is to get the log so that the pith is equal distance from all of the bunk rails all the way down there, so that you can you know, make and acquire the best amount of wood in the straightest grain and all the other things that you're looking to do. But you don't necessarily have to make that type of cutting, because you know, for me, sometimes I'll cut because there's a wide stump end on the log, and you know, you're not sure where it's going to be anyhow, and I'll just cut it and go from there. But the purpose of the toe board is to raise or lower the log. That's all it is. Okay, really you can't lower it lower than the bunk, but to raise it up 1, 2, 3 inches. It doesn't go much further than about 3, maybe 4 inches above the bunk rail. Now you can see the way that I have this mounted. When the couplings that are at this end, okay, there's one over here and there's one over on this side. When the couplings are already all the way open, this thing is about 1 inch below this. Now, I would like it a little closer. It doesn't have to be 1 inch low. It could be a quarter of an inch low, just so it's lower than the bunk rail, so that you can get the boards, once they're cut, to lay flat on all these bunk rails. And all these bunk rails are in line with one another because I set the sawmill up level. It's dead level. So anyway, this is the toe board that I made, and what you do with it to use it. I told you what you use it for, okay, but let me just show you. What I do is I have a tool here, and I put that tool on the shaft that goes over, and I turn it, and you can see that as I turn it, because there's a left and a right thread down there, that coupling on the bottom is coming this way, and this coupling is going that way, and that raises the toe board. Okay, now that because I made the toe board out of 1 inch stuff, it's actually pretty strong. I mean, it can pick up some pretty big logs without any problems. But you do have to do a little bit of crank, and it's not the end of the world. I mean, I've discovered that a socket and a ratchet works just as good as the crank. Although you can take a piece of 3/4 inch stock if you have to, and bend it to be able to make, you know, a crank that's similar to what you're seeing right there. But I usually don't leave the crank in there. I take the crank out and set it underneath the sawmill. And the reason for that is so I don't hit it with my legs, because you're not really working that thing a lot. You're only moving it up here, up and down now and then. Okay, so then what I did was, after I welded the two bolts together, one is left hand 19 inches long and the other one's right hand 19 inches long, then what I do is, on the right side over here, I put one nut on that, and on the opposite side I have two nuts over on this side, so that one nut stabilizes the bolt from moving side to side. The other nut is the one you crank to turn the tool up and down. Now I usually pin them together, but I've been welding them recently, and welding them works better than pinning them. And then besides that, you saw in my last video how I make the hangers for it. So the point is that when you look where my finger is, there's a coupling onto a flat piece of metal, and that side and this side both look the same. So if you look there, you can see there's the piece of metal with the 3 screws in it, and there's a coupling coming through that's welded to that metal on both sides. Now you can't see it from here, but if you watch the other video you'll see that. So anyway, that's basically what this thing does and how it operates. Now when I was making this, you know, making it go up and down pretty much evenly, and that depends on how you adjust the nuts. I can't think of the name of them at the second, but the two nuts, one that's right here, coupling, one that's here and one that's there, you can move them in or out a little bit, not a lot, but a little, to get the full height of the toe board. So once I made those, I realized that the toe board could fall over. So I needed something to stop the toe board from falling over. I mean, once you were against a log, it pretty much would stay there, but sometimes the log could slip or whatever. So I figured that if I put this second piece in here, right here, this one, the one that has these straps on, if I put that in there, and then I put these uprights on the toe board itself, welded them on, that would stop the toe board from, you know, canting this way or towards the other beam here, the bunk rail. And it works pretty good. I've had no problem with it. I will tell you though that I put grease fittings, the couplings that stick out of here, that they're actually not couplings, they're just a dowel of pipe that sticks out both sides. You really should grease them, and I have grease fittings on there. So what I do also is I usually put some WD-40 on this thing just to keep it from making any noise or whatever when I'm working it, and that alone pretty much takes care of that. Now if you look at that real closely, you can see that on the rail there, there's sawdust, but underneath on the bolt, it's pretty clean. Okay, so that rail also, besides the fact that it holds the toe board straight up and down, it also keeps the toe board from getting a lot of dust on it. And that is a help, because if you had dust on the threads, you know, sooner or later they're going to tighten up and you're going to have to brush them off or clean them or something. But you can see on this side here where this is a unthreaded coupling or pipe welded to that metal, that sheet metal, and then this is a coupling here that's threaded right or left hand, depends on which side it's on. When you put this on the sawmill, this coupling should be about 1/2 of an inch below this beam. So if you take the coupling with the two brackets on it and raise it up, okay, you could actually raise it up in the middle. So in other words, you don't have this piece, you don't have anything here on, all you have is the bolt. If you take the bolt and raise it up and put something underneath it and put like 1/2 inch plywood on both sides, on this side and on the opposite side. You can keep it about a ½ inch below the bunk rail, and that helps the top of this to stay below the not the bunk rail. You want it to be ½ inch below the side rails, and that keeps this to be about 1/4 to an inch below the bunk rail. Now, you know, these are pretty much all made. They're not made to machinist tolerances, but they are made pretty close to what you need. So you may have to shim behind this one or the opposite one on the other side there, this one over here on this bracket, because there's no way to adjust this. You know, it's just it fits and it does what it's supposed to do, and that's all there is to it. So you may have to put a piece of tin or sheet metal or something behind that to you know, make that tighten up, or you may have to bump it with a hammer or whatever, bend in on this or the other one to make it fit into where it should go. But anyway, that's the toe board, and I did not like the toe board that you could get for the mill. It just, I didn't like the way it worked, and it just seemed messed up to me. But this one here does work better. Now you can see on the top of the toe board here that it's pretty much got some scratches and stuff on this side and not many on that side. That's because, you know, you're using one side to cut all these smaller logs that I end up with towards the end of my cutting, which is where I'm at the moment. So, you know, but the main thing is that it'll pick up the log anywhere along there, because that's going up there straight. So that's just how I made it, and that's how it works. Now on this one here, if you look real close here, I put there's like a coupling over the threads there. I stopped putting the coupling on because it's not needed. This coupling doesn't, where are we at here? This coupling doesn't do anything. So just welding it, grinding it is better than putting the coupling over it. So I don't do that anymore either. But I've made a lot of these, and I've sent a lot of them out, and most of the people are happy with them. In fact, I haven't had any complaints or anything, but you know, you got to know a little bit about how to do things when you put it together. Like I say, if you pick up the bolt, if you pick up that the bolt, the Acme bolt, you want to put a ½ inch wedge or something on each side, and then go ahead and bolt them in place. And then when you put this top bolt on here, this top bracket, this one right here, what you want to do is be about 1/4 of an inch below the side rail, this side frame here. So you're going to be about 1/4 of an inch below that, and then you should be in good shape. I like what I made here. It does exactly what I wanted it to do, which is to raise and lower the log that's too heavy for me to pick up. Now a lot of times, I'm not saying that you have to have this, but I will tell you this, it sure makes life a little bit easier if you have a log and you're not a fat guy like me and you can't get the log to, you know, pry it up with the tool you're using. That thing will pick the log up. So it's come in handy for me for where I have heavy logs that I can't really, you know, pick up, and I can't get a board underneath them because I can't get them high enough or whatever. So that's where it comes in handy. And for me, my sawmill should have actually been built down that way further. I should have moved the sawmill, I don't know, if I had it to do over again, I'd probably move the shed and everything 10 feet down there. But it works out for me to get into the kiln and all, and I'm okay with it. I'm not I can deal with it. If I was using a smaller machine with skids or forks on them rather than the backhoe, it would be easier to load this. But I have the backhoe, I use a chain, and I don't have a problem loading it. Now it's easier if you have somebody with you to load it, but you know, it's hard to find manual labor today. But anyway, that's how you use that thing. That's how I mounted it. and that's how it works. So that's about it. So guys, I hope you're having a good day, good weekend. I have to admit to you that I've been doing a bunch of other stuff around the house, but that doesn't mean that I've been totally busy all the time, because my age is against me, and this heat really does me in a little bit. It's not a really hot day today, but it's still above 70, and it kind of does you in when you get to be my age, maybe even younger, I don't know. And some guys are okay with it, but I've been having a problem with the heat. Of course, I have a problem with the cold anymore, so I don't know. But the other things that I have to do, even building the garage, seem to be slipping away from me. I mean, that's something I used to be able to do in about 3 days. Now, it's like, you know, taking forever to get going with it. So I hope to be able to pour the slab for the garage soon, but I have to do some digging over there. So, anyway, I thought I'd show you, and that answers the two questions, which were, the first question was, you know, can you show us what you're talking about with the toe board, which I just answered. And the other question was, how did I weld the bolt together to be so straight? And I think I answered that. So that's it. If you have more questions, just ask. I'll be happy to answer any question you have if I can. Alright guys, have a good one. Bye. Oh, the thing I wanted to say also is, if you need any of these dog ends, I can get them. I make them, and I can also make the bolt and the handle, so that you don't have to send me anything for me to tap. So I can tap that and send you the whole thing. Usually I make a set of them. The best thing you could do is email me at bullseyemickey@gmail.com. That's BULLSEYEMICKEY@gmail.com. And if you want to ask the prices of stuff on that, I'll answer you there. I'd rather do it there than on the thing, on the YouTube channel, because the prices change sometimes. I mean, some of the steel for this thing went up 30% since I started making them. It's pretty hard to believe, but I also went to the dump today, and a bag of garbage that used to be $2.50 to throw away has now become $3.25 to throw a bag of garbage away. So no matter what, it seems like we pay. But anyway, if you have any questions about how, you know, actually how to make it or whatever, don't be afraid to ask. I have no problem if somebody else makes these. You know, it doesn't matter to me. If you want me to make them, I can make them. If you want to make them yourself, then, you know, be my guest. It doesn't matter to me one bit. Alright guys, have a good one. Bye. Okay guys, I decided, instead of shutting this video down, to show you, someone else had asked about this, and I'm going to show you this. Now, I have my two bevel siding cutters on the sawmill. There's one here and one here. Now normally, let me just try and back up here. Normally you don't work with them that close. I'd have one there, and then I'd have one somewhere near 8 feet away, because I make 8-foot siding or 12-foot siding. And two of these usually work pretty good, as long as you have a, you know, a good stiff piece of pine or whatever you're going to make the siding from. But let me just show you. These are not hard to make, but they're hard to think of if you haven't had one before. Okay, so all I did here with this bevel siding cutter, and keep in mind, you can cut a piece of wood like a wedge, and you can cut bevel siding by taking that wedge in and out of the board. Now that's a little bit of a pain. If you don't mind doing it, well then do it, and you save yourself some money. But the way I did this is I actually made a U shape out of metal. Okay, I put a backstop on here that would hit this backstop, and then I put a 1/4 inch bolt. Now I needed the 1/4 inch bolt. I need this to act like a hinge here, so that's the bottom part. Okay, then on the top part I have another 1/4 inch bolt there, and that bolt once this is laid on top of that, acts like a little bit of a hinge. And all you're doing is moving this up and down 1/2 of an inch. That's all that's happening, okay? So what happens here in the front, now mine's a little different than the ones I make. The ones I make are nicer and that I have mailed out. But like, you need 3/4 of an inch by 1/4 of an inch piece of stock to work this thing, okay? So once you have that put in there and you put these boxes together, all you do to work this is you turn it up to make a bevel cut. So what I would be doing is I would have both of them, and it works out pretty good. So in other words, let's say, well, let's put them down. All right, so I have them down right now. Now that means that it's going to be a level cut. All right, so, you know, I come back here where the saw is, and I go down there roughly 12 feet. And on my way back, like once I put the saw down here after I've made the cut, I can either put the saw back, or I can stop the saw for a second, take the 12-footer off that I cut, and when I do, I raise this up, okay? Because the weight of this, the wood that's on there holds it. So I raise them up, bring the saw back, and make another cut. Now the cut I make will be a bevel cut, and you want to get used to moving the saw, you know, up or down the distance that you need to make a nice edge on it. What I like, on the small bevel side, the narrower bevel side, right, I want that to be close to 1/4 of an inch thick. All right, so I'm not going to tell you what you should do with that, but all I'm saying is once you put it down, this thing will start making the bevel siding for you. You just got to know, and I'll show you a piece of siding here. You just have to know what you want on the thin side. Now this is the thick side, which is about 1/2 of an inch. And on this side I have like 1/4 of an inch or so. Slightly less, but it works really good and it works quick. And you don't have to be picking the cant up each time. All you got to do is put the cant on there. The cant bumps against this little stop, okay? And all you need to do is dog it if you want to. You should dog it someplace just to keep the cant down, that it doesn't move up when you cut through it. And that's all you do, is you go down. Right now I'd be making a bevel cut. I get to the end, I take the siding off, I lower these two, I bring the saw back, I make a straight cut. Now because the previous cut was an angle, that means I have an angled piece of siding with a straight back on it. Okay, then I'm going to come back, I'm going to turn these back up again, and all I do is make another cut. So that's all it is to it. It's just that 3/4 inch to 1/2 inch piece is a little bit hard to figure out how to make it work, and it took me a little while to figure it out good, but you know, I have what I have. It would be nicer if I had some sort of round thing in here that would turn with it, but it really doesn't matter because they stay up really good just from the weight of the cant. And I can cut, as long as the board is a good piece of wood, I can cut right down to the last 1/2 inch and still get a pretty nice piece of siding. Now sometimes if you have something that's going to warp or bend or twist, you know, you might end up having some problems with that, but you'd have a problem with that no matter what you use to cut it. So I'm just saying, this is what I use, and this is how I cut bevel siding. Alright guys, that should answer the questions that were asked of me in the past couple weeks, and like I said, I hope you have a good weekend. Bye. Oh, just so I don't forget, I do make these and ship them out if you need. If you want these made, you know, if you don't have the tools and stuff to make it, I can understand that. If you want, I can make these. And I've also made them not just for Woodmizer. I've made them for all kind of sawmills already by adjusting the way that I put the box around the rail. Because some rails are just a piece of sheet metal. So, alright guys, have a good one.